So in a move that can only be seen as not particularly shocking, the LA Kings have named John Stevens their head coach. Now, John Stevens has been a head coach before. John Stevens. Or 1966, blah, blah, blah. Drafted by the Flyers in the 84 draft. Followed a junior career the Oshawa Generals. Played 4 seasons for the Hershey Bears. He only played 9 games with the Flyers. Went to the Whalers. Like, this is the kind of guy that you will often see end up being a coach in the NHL. Played hockey. Had, you know, the acumen that he got drafted as a player. Played a lot in the American League. Played some games, smattering of games in the NHL. Now is a good coach. This is why I'm waiting for Nolan Baumgartner to show up as like a massive coach in terms of his American Hockey League acumen. So he won the Hockey News Coach of the Year in 2008. Has 2 Stanley Cups to his record as a assistant coach, or as assistant coach. He played 53 games in the NHL and had 10 assists. His coaching statistics. He coached in the American League for a total of 6 years. They won 1 Calder Cup while he was coaching the Phantoms. And his record with the Flyers wasn't great. He got them into the 3rd round where they lost against Pittsburgh in 2008. They lost in the 1st round against Pittsburgh in 2009, and then he was fired in the mid-season 2009-2010. And then he had 4 games as an interim coach for LA in 11-12, which of course is the season that the Kings won the Stanley Cup. So he succeeded Daryl Sutter. He had 4 games in between Terry Murray and Daryl Sutter, and of course hiring Sutter turned out to be a wonderful idea for the Los Angeles Kings at the time. So what by Stevens going from assistant coach to head coach, I think, he's got the acumen. He's done it before. He's been a head coach before, and he's had some success. I remember before Willie Desjardins was hired in Vancouver, they talked a lot about John Stevens being a natural fit for Vancouver as coach. And for me, I was always of the mind that coaches can be interchangeable. You have your rare coaches you can look at and say, okay, this coach is going to help them short term. Then you have coaches that you say, okay, this is going to be a team that's very tough to beat in the regular season, but in the postseason, this coach hasn't shown he can do it. And then you're going to have just those coaches that are all over the place. Now, Pat Burns, Ken Hitchcock, I guess John Tortorella to some extent, guys who can do it short term, but because of their in-your-face strong attitude, it's hard to maintain that over a long period of time. And I discuss Pat Burns a lot because, it took until he passed away before the NHL realized that he belonged to the Hall of Fame. And I see parallels between him and Ken Hitchcock. I see parallels as well with Tortorella. So, in terms of what Stevens brings, to me, Stevens is he's one of those coaches that he's good. He's not a guy who's going to necessarily make the Kings a contender next year. What makes the Kings a contender or a pretender next year is how well they fix their problems up front. Goaltending should fix itself because they have Jonathan Quick, or they keep Bishop and trade Quick. Whatever they're going to do, however they're going to do it, the Kings, should have good goaltending. Their defense, they have good defense. With Martinez, Muzzin, Doughty, That's a top end on your defense. It's pretty damn good. And then whoever fills out the bottom three, as long as they're competent, LA can compete on the blue line. But it's up front. And it's Gaborik, it's Brown. They have to find a way to get rid of those guys. And their buyouts are an option. There's some way of doing this. And it's going to be a mind much smarter than my own who's going to figure it out. So, and I keep reading about how Rob Blake and Luc Robitaille have a plan here. I hope so. I genuinely hope so. And I hope that in going and bringing in former Kings to run things, that it works better than it did for the Oilers and bringing in former Oilers than it has for some teams when they bring in former players. I think of Montreal Canadiens in the 90s sometimes were guilty of that too, where they'd bring in a guy and you go, does he belong there? Probably not, but he played for them, so he's going to get that job. I think they do that because they want to reward somebody for being loyal to the organization for decades. And there's also some appeasement to the fans there. I know in Vancouver, with Trevor Linden running the show, it's kind of felt like an appeasement move by ownership. Like, as long as Linden is in charge of it, whatever level Linden's actually in charge of things, as long as he's in charge and he's the public face of the Canucks, Vancouver fans are going to be far more forgiving for the rough times we're going through with this team, because Trevor Linden is a beloved figure in Vancouver. He was the face of the Vancouver Canucks for 10 years playing for them, and now he's the face of them again. And even in between, while not officially a member of the organization after his retirement, he has been the face of the franchise. The only other one that to me comes close is Kirk McLean. McLean has been very closely associated with the Canucks. I know when I went to the Vancouver-Boston game, I saw Kirk McLean. I was like, I can get a picture taken with him. Then I looked down and I'm like, I'm wearing a Boston jersey. I'm not even going to try it. Nope, I'm not even going to try it because it doesn't look genuine. But, it's not a hire that I dislike for the Kings. But in the end, it's really going to be the roster. I don't blame Daryl Sutter for what happened to the Kings this year. I think Daryl Sutter coached as well as he could with what he had. I think there was a lack of scoring touch up front. I think there were some players who were past their prime and the team decided to reload at the trade deadline instead of unload. And we'll see how that affects things going forward. I know Ginla wanted one last run. Going to the Kings wasn't going to get him one last run. Apparently going to the Flames wasn't either. If he goes to the Flames, there's no way that turns that series around and they beat the Ducks. That would not have been enough. But, Ginla likely this was his last chance. And now, unless the Kings decide to keep him in the organization in some way, shape, or form, he's done. And the real question here is, does hiring Stevens help get the Kings back to the playoffs? Because to me, it feels like it's a safe decision. It's a good decision. It's one that, like, I can't really find fault with it, because if you're rewarding a guy who's been your assistant head coach since 2011, a guy who has been with the organization a long time and supposedly hasn't complained about not being given the chance before now to pursue other opportunities. I believe that the Kings always gave other teams the opportunity to talk to him. But I guess we'll see how it works out for him and for the Kings in general. You guys can let me know what you think in the comments below. It's worthy of a video because it's a head coach being hired. I just wonder if Stevens is a placeholder for someone else. I'm still surprised Daryl Sutter got fired, because Sutter's a really good coach, and it is very surprising that he got fired. So who knows? Maybe he ends up in Calgary in some sort of an advisory role or a scout role, because Daryl Sutter is a hockey guy, and he is, unlike my channel here where it's just a name I made for myself on the spur of the moment, thinking, well, I'll just make this a placeholder until I think of something better. and then it stuck. No, Daryl Sutter's a real deal. And I do think Daryl Sutter is a better coach than John Stevens. But we'll see how Stevens meshes with this team. So again, let me know what you guys think. Don't forget to hit like and subscribe if you're browsing your way through. And we're less than an hour away from Boston, Ottawa. I'm really looking forward to it. It should be a lot of fun.